Meet Shenron. Half the time, Shenron is a married man just trying to keep his wife happy and safe. The other half he spends as Min Wang, Emperor of China's criminal underworld. Trying to juggle a mafia identity and entertaining a new wife is no easy feat. His wife has no idea about his alter ego, and Shenron wants to keep it that way. So when his assistant Lin Fang appears, dangling from a helicopter outside the window of his apartment, he gets pretty mad. As such a dutiful new husband, he sees domestic tasks as far more important than answering any mafia issues, even if that means cleaning the toilet. Shenron yells at his Lin Fang, telling him not to disturb him while he's home. But clearly, this news can't wait. The assistant reveals that his third brother is looking for him and has sent forces out to hunt him down. You might think this news would shock Shenron into, I don't know, maybe dropping the cleaning supplies and taking the threat to his life more seriously? But when his wife calls from the shower, he drops everything to bring her a bath towel and tells Lin Fang to get lost before his wife sees him. Jeez, this guy really takes his work-life balance super seriously. Shenron rushes over to bring the towel to his wife as she's stepping out of the shower. Clearly, they haven't been married long, as when she appears from the steam, this criminal king suddenly gets very hot and bothered. Lik Shui, his wife, doesn't seem to mind her own nudity half as much as he does, and practically collapses on him, dropping the towel to the floor as Shenron picks her up and carries her over to the bed. It's not clear who dressed who, but one way or another, Lik Shui ends up in a beautiful nightgown laid out like a maiden. But this might not be the most ideal setup for their first night together. Lik Shui seems to have a fever, which leaves her young husband concerned that something has gone wrong at work. While worrying for his wife, it's revealed in a flashback that Shenron and Lik Shui have been close since childhood, when Lik Shui had brown hair and was known as Shui-er. As a child, Shui-er had strong feelings for Shenron and wanted to be with him always, but was forced to move away with her parents, separating them until a fateful car accident that removed all her memories of Shenron and their time together. After such a horrific incident, it's understandable that Shenron is incredibly defensive of his wife and prioritizes their relationship over anything, whether that's cleaning toilets or ensuring her success at work. He calls up one of his mini-assistants to find out if anything happened at Lik Shui's company that might have caused her distress, and his hunch is correct. Lik Shui's company just produced a new type of cosmetic which would have been sure to bring her great success. But the first batch were all stolen last night. The cosmetics were due to be delivered tomorrow afternoon. Even if they could somehow be remade, it would be too late now to complete the original delivery. Ordinarily, Lik Shui would be in a difficult situation, that is, if she didn't have Shenron for a husband. The cosmetics were stolen by a competitor named Chen Guang. Once he has the location of the factory, Shenron is off to confront the thieves, who are planning to repackage the cosmetics and sell them overseas that night. Luckily, Shenron arrives before they can pull it off, walking in line like an action hero and sending two of the criminals flying through the warehouse with a single punch. The flustered criminals ask what they've done to offend him, but Shenron only responds that their ultimate crime was offending Zhao Lik Shui, which is the same as offending him. Once the mobsters realize he's there on Lik Shui's behalf, they tell him there's nothing that can be done. Even if he gets her products back, there won't be a chance of that next time. Shenron responds in cold blood that there won't be a next time, which prompts the competitor, Chen, to start begging for his life. Scrambling for his life, Chen tells Shenron he'll never get away without jail time if he kills him. Shenron coolly responds that he would never violate the law, which I don't totally believe. I mean, look at this guy. He's holding him in the air in a chokehold. You think he's never broken the law? Anyway, Shenron claims he has several other ways to make this guy's life hell, so he offers him one final chance. He tells Chen to personally return every item he stole to Lik Shui's company, and to compensate them for their loss by 10 times the original price of the stolen goods. The criminal answers that that's impossible, and refuses to give any kind of apology to Lik Shui. Instead of flying into a rage, Shenron simply shrugs and asks to confirm his company's name. Chen says it's Jiao Cosmetics, which Shenron says is a nice name. It's a shame it'll be closed after today. Chen bursts out laughing, clearly underestimating Shenron's power. But he doesn't care. Shenron is already on the phone to someone at the stock market about the shares in Jiao Cosmetics. Even hearing this, Chen is still laughing when Shenron hangs up and calmly lights a cigarette. But then, the thug's phone starts ringing, and when he picks up, he discovers their company's share prices have already gone down by 40% and are only continuing to drop. That's what you get for underestimating Min Wang, Emperor of the Underworld. Facing financial ruin, the mobster suddenly sees Shenron in a new light, staring in horror at this man who just ruined his life's work in less than 2 minutes. Shenron offers to save a sliver of his company by calling off his people, but only on the conditions of the compensation and his personal apology. Having seen his power, Chen has no choice but to accept, and promises to do anything he asks so long as he backs off. He even gets down on his knees to beg, which Shenron accepts. He issues one last threat before he leaves, saying that if Chen goes back on his word, he won't leave him even a scrap of the company he once owned. Later, Likshui's company discovers the stolen cosmetics right at their front door. Likshui, the CEO, is delighted upon hearing this news and orders her workers to increase security and guard the cosmetics carefully to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. She has no clue that it was really her husband who saved her business, but either way, she's very grateful and seems to be feeling better after hearing the good news. She's still in her nightgown when Shenron returns home, and before she even greets him, she calls him up to their apartment, demanding he wash her feet. Chief Simp Shenron runs straight over with a bucket of water. It seems he would do just about anything for her, and doesn't mind one bit as he gets down on his knees for her. It turns out, in addition to beating up bad guys and saving businesses, we can add Foot Massage Master to the list of Shenron's secret talents, because he does such a wonderful job that his wife struggles to keep still as he relaxes her. Well, she probably deserves a little break after the stress of nearly losing her whole company. The next day, Likshui arrives back at work to find CEO Chen waiting for her in the conference room. Likshui doesn't know it was him who interfered with her product until he apologizes and admits his wrongdoings to her, along with the money he swore he'd give as compensation. Obviously, Likshui isn't going to turn down money and a personal apology, but now she is curious about this secret helper who's been working in her favor. Back at home, Shenron suddenly sneezes and wonders if it's a sign that his wife is thinking about him. Honestly, does this guy ever think about anything other than his woman? But his daydreaming is interrupted by a phone call from Lin Feng, his assistant, who reveals that someone has put a bounty on Likshui. Shenron is straight back to business mode, asking who has their sights on his wife and when they plan to take action. Lin Feng replies with the worst news possible, that a professional killer known as the Kavast Killer was hired through the dark web and is planning a hit on her tomorrow. Suddenly, Likshui walks in, ordering Shenron to dinner tomorrow night and telling him to dress well. Immediately hanging up, Shenron hides his fears with a smile and asks where they're going. Likshui gets huffy and tells him to stop asking so many questions, but Shenron doesn't mind her attitude or the way she bosses him about. As long as he can be by her side and keep her safe, he's happy. And he hopes that if he keeps it up, one day she will remember him. The next evening, they arrive at a Western restaurant, where it seems like Likshui is even more nervous than Shenron, even though he's the one looking out for a murderer trying to target his wife. But when they arrive, another obstacle presents itself in the form of this weird guy, Mr. Liu, who seems to have a special interest in Likshui. Sensing an opponent, Shenron introduces himself and gets between his wife and Mr. Liu, who starts asking rude questions about how much he earns. He makes a big fuss about how much a man should make to be able to keep a wonderful woman like Likshui happy, so Shenron decides to teach him a lesson. When the two men go to shake hands, he gives Mr. Liu his full strength, practically crushing his hand, while telling him that making women happy has nothing to do with money. His tactic works, and the rude man backs off, shaking his very bruised hand. Apparently, Likshui missed their interaction entirely, and cheerfully encourages them towards the table to place their orders. The restaurant appears to be Russian, and weirdly the entire menu and the waiter speak only in Russian, which is incredibly suspicious. Could this be the spot where the Kavast Killer makes his move? The language barrier doesn't bother Shenron one bit, as he orders several dishes for the table in fluent Russian and offers to help Mr. Liu order too, trying to embarrass him further. Before anyone can place an order, Shenron's instincts kick in, and he stomps down on his wife's foot, making her jerk fast enough to avoid the bullet flying towards her. It lands instead in the head of the waiter, which terrifies the other customers, who start screaming and trying to escape. But instead of giving himself away by playing the hero, Shenron pretends to also panic and bolts, leaving his wife to be grabbed and pulled into cover by a female cop who appears out of nowhere. The cop manages to get her to the ground as another shot comes straight for Likshui. The sniper is all the way up on the roof of an opposite building. But that's no challenge for Shenron, not when his wife's life is on the line. He reaches the rooftop in seconds, using the commotion as a distraction to head straight to the source of the threat, and removes the weapon from the killer with lightning speed. The sniper is shocked at his skills, but Shenron doesn't have time to show off. He asks the sniper who hired him and turns the gun on him to show just how serious he is. The sniper takes a big risk in choosing to stay silent, thinking there's no way Shenron will kill him before he's got the information he's after. I guess he doesn't realize that this is the Min Wang he's talking to. Shenron fires the shot before the words are even out of his mouth, grumbling about people wasting his time as the sniper falls to the floor. Then, he calmly returns to the street like nothing ever happened, leaving the sniper's body for the police to find. When he gets back to the restaurant, he resumes his crybaby act, rushing to his wife and saying how relieved he is to find her alive and how terrifying and dangerous everything was. But Likshui isn't ready to forgive him so quickly. The moment he gets within range, she slaps him and calls him a coward, asking how a husband could possibly leave his wife in a situation like that. That's when the police officer steps forward. She introduces herself as Queen Ya, a city officer who suspects that the killer is after his wife. Wonder how she worked that out. Maybe it was all the rounds being fired directly at Lik Shui. I don't know, just a hunch. She asks Shenron to come to the city bureau to record his testimony, which impresses him enough to convince him to cooperate. By the time they finished up at the bureau, it's pretty late, so King Ya offers to drive the couple home. On the ride back, it becomes obvious that Lik Shui is still angry with Shenron. I mean, you can't exactly blame her. From her perspective, it looks like her baby of a husband ran off crying in the middle of a sniper attack, leaving her for dead. But there isn't time to reassure her or apologize when Shenron gets a message from Lin Feng, warning him about another ambush planned at his house, which they're currently on the way to. Man, this guy just cannot catch a break. Trying to divert them, Shenron tells the others his tummy is hurting and asks to get out and use the toilet first. Lik Shui is still mad at him and says nothing as he leaves, not aware that he's planning to run ahead and take on all the bandits awaiting them at their home. When he arrives, a group of actual ninjas come flying at him from out of nowhere. Of course, they're no match for Shenron, who takes care of them in seconds and sends them tumbling to the ground. Then he walks inside to find the boss casually sitting in his home, having a glass of wine. Clearly, this guy misunderstands the situation, because he thinks Shenron is there to beg forgiveness. He promises to spare his life, but only if Shenron bows down 3 times. So, Shenron makes an offer of his own. If the gangster cleans his shoe prints off the floor and admits who hired him, he will forgive him too. Obviously, the gangster just laughs, but he only gets a few seconds to enjoy it before Shenron's fist is sailing towards his face. That shuts him up. As he's flailing in shock, Shenron reveals that he already knows exactly who this guy is. His name is Fu Luo. He's in the Blood Soul Killer organization and is ranked 27th in killing. So, Shenron offers the deal again. Reveal his employer or die. The gangster has changed his tune now that his nose is bent halfway across his face, and asks who he is. Shenron, used to this kind of confusion by now, just steps on him, forcing another spurt of blood from his mouth. He reminds Fu Luo that he has one chance only, both for him and his entire organization. At the same time, he drops his tag, revealing himself as Ming Wang, Emperor of the Underworld. The man beneath his feet is weirdly honored to be facing death at the hands of Ming Wang, and agrees to tell him the name of his employer if only Shenron will kill him himself. Kind of a weird take on your own death, but okay. He reveals that his employer is a man named Fei Long, who hired them to kill Lik Shui. Once he's got the information, Shenron gives Fu Luo what he asked for, calling Lin Feng to dispose of the body and search on the name of Fei Long on the dark web. It doesn't take them long. He is the master of the Long family in Jinghua City, and one of the 10 leading young entrepreneurs in China. But this doesn't make any sense. Why would a young man with prospects like that have a motive to kill Lik Shui? Shenron orders them to keep checking, and swears that whoever goes after his wife is already marked for death. He's barely off the phone before Lik Shui returns, when he turns back into the idiot husband, covering any trace of the criminal underlord from moments ago. However, Lik Shui doesn't accept the idiot act. After the attempt on her life at the restaurant, she sees no way to forgive him for his cowardice, and tells him to get out of their apartment immediately. Shenron asks to at least prepare her some food first, since they didn't get to eat before the shooting started. But Lik Shui isn't in the mood to argue. She tells him that if he doesn't leave, she will. If she leaves, there will be no way for Shenron to protect her, and after all the bad guys he's fended off and murdered today, there's no way he's willing to put her back in harm's way. So he agrees to go, leaving Lik Shui in the apartment and hoping she'll be safe there. While his wife is crying, Shenron finds a grassy place to collect his thoughts. Things haven't exactly turned out the way he was hoping, and the fact that Lik Shui still has no memories of him isn't helping. So he decides to call her parents as backup, but when her father picks up the phone, he immediately starts screaming at Shenron, asking what the heck he was doing while a sniper was aiming at his daughter. Seriously, won't anyone cut this guy some slack? No one seems to realize that poor Shenron is the only reason Lik Shui's still alive. After explaining the truth to his father-in-law, Shenron earns his forgiveness. The man even thanks him for taking care of his daughter and says he still has a lot of faith in him. But he can see that Shenron is struggling to protect her all on his own, so he assigns a personal bodyguard to his daughter to at least give her husband enough time to deal with any threats as they appear. Shenron thanks him for the bodyguard, but asks first if he has any advice on how he can return to his apartment while his wife is still so mad at him. Her father agrees to help, although he's not totally sure what he can do. What neither of them know is that Likshui isn't in the apartment. She's already in a car speeding towards him, planning to tell her father that she wants to divorce Shenron immediately. Well, I hope her father is ready. Looks like Shenron's going to need all the help he can get. When Likshui arrives at her father's stately home, she is greeted by a young woman she has never seen before. Although Likshui is a little suspicious, she follows as the girl leads her inside. Surprised to see her so early in the morning, Likshui's father asks if she'd like to have breakfast. But this isn't a social visit. The moment she sees him, Likshui screams that she wants to divorce Shenron as soon as possible. This doesn't shock her father at all. Likshui doesn't know that he just got off the phone with her husband, who told him everything. So, her dad tells her not to worry about what happened at the restaurant. You know, when several trained killers had made an attempt on her life. Instead, he calmly introduces the strange girl as Likshui's new bodyguard, Bing Juan. Likshui accepts the bodyguard, but asks that in exchange for her compliance, she should be allowed to divorce Shenron. Her father sternly reminds her of the marriage agreement they signed, which states that if Likshui is the one to file for divorce, then Shenron receives 50% of their shares and will therefore effectively take half of the Zhao family corporation. Yikes. Haven't these people ever heard of a prenup? It seems like a pretty harsh deal, especially for Likshui, who is just upset because she thinks her husband abandoned her in a moment of mortal peril. Likshui's father isn't particularly sympathetic. He just sends her back to her apartment, where she finds Shenron smiling back inside. Apparently, her wonderful father gave him permission to come back to their home even after Likshui sent him packing. Of course, she's not exactly happy about the whole arrangement, but seeing as he went to the trouble of cooking her dinner, she agrees to sit down and eat. That's when Likshui invites him to accompany her to a reception being held this evening. Ever the dutiful husband, Shenron is just excited to spend time with her and waves her off with a smile when she heads to work with Bing Juan. Once his wife is at work, Shenron heads to an orphanage. It seems like even crime lords can have hearts, because it turns out he visits this place often and always donates staggering amounts of money. Suddenly, disaster strikes. While he's catching up with Dean, who manages the orphanage, a bus full of children swerves into them on the pavement, knocking them off their feet. Part-time mobster, part-time superhero Shenron immediately leaps on top of the bus, where he discovers the driver slumped at the wheel, clearly injured and unconscious. Shenron breaks in through the window to try and get control of the situation, just as a bus comes swerving out onto the road in front of them. If he wants to save the kids, not to mention himself, Shenron will need to stop this nightmare here and now. He throws the driver out of his seat and jumps behind the wheel himself, slamming down on the brakes with all of his strength. And it's just about enough. The bus comes to a screeching halt barely inches from the vehicle in front of him. The other driver is, well, he's pretty rude, but Shenron doesn't care as long as the kids are okay. One girl with pink hair is so grateful that she runs to Shenron for a hug when he accidentally grabs a handful of, well, I think you can guess. The girl is mortified and stumbles away as Shenron mumbles an apology. But no one else on the bus has noticed the brief moment of touching, because they're all too busy chanting Shenron's name and calling him a hero. He leads the kids off the bus, and the pink-haired girl steps forward to introduce herself as Ki Shiru. Apparently, she's their teacher, but she barely looks a year older than the kids herself. Shiru thanks him for saving them, and even though he's probably the one who should be apologizing, Shenron tells her off, saying she needs to be more careful when watching children. I'm not sure what he expected her to do on a bus being driven by an unconscious drunkard, but Shiru feels responsible, and suddenly panics that she'll be fired if he tells Dean what happened. Luckily for her, Shenron isn't interested in causing any more trouble. He tells all the kids to keep quiet about the accident, and shockingly, they all agree, because a near-death encounter is no big deal when you're 12, I guess, right? Ki Shiru can't believe her luck, and watches on as Shenron approaches Dean with another packet of money. Maintaining his air of mystery, he doesn't stick around for a chat, and only tells old Dean to look after his health, promising to visit again soon. Of course, Shiru becomes curious about the stranger who saved her life and her job. She asks Dean if Shenron was once a child at this orphanage, and he tells her Shenron's story, which only makes her more eager to see him again. Later that evening, Shenron and Likshui are getting ready for the reception. It's a big event, attended by everyone in the industry, where they'll bid for the chance to win a trade partnership with Shumei Cosmetics, a very successful company. Likshui asks Shenron to dress up smart and not cause any trouble tonight. So, Shenron emerges in a white suit, feeling pretty pleased with himself. But he's nothing compared to Likshui. Once her hair is done up and she steps out in her ball gown, Shenron goes full-on simp mode and starts blushing like a schoolgirl. His wife just drags him along, reminding Shenron to be on his best behavior when they arrive at the reception. And guess who they bump into? Mr. Liu, that nosy guy from the restaurant where Likshui was almost murdered. Not only is he really rude, but he's also got a thing for Likshui, which might explain why Shenron immediately flies off the handle trying to humiliate him. After asking if Lu's hands still hurt from when he crushed them, he asks if he's wearing a diaper or if that's just 2 sets of pants he can see. Well, that didn't take long. What was that, maybe 2 whole minutes after they arrived, and Shenron is already causing a scene. Lu looks about ready to punch his lights out before his father, Lu Dong, holds him back. This snobby guy insults Lik Shui's father, saying he's a pretty poor excuse for a son-in-law if he dares to come to receptions and speak rudely to people above him. And if the first guy got under his skin, something tells me this other dude is going to seriously ruffle Shenron's feathers. For once, however, he doesn't have to handle it himself. Lik Shui steps in to defend him, saying Shenron has every right to be at this reception, since technically they both own her cosmetics company, and both received an invitation to participate from the host. The snobby Lu Dong doesn't step down. He calls Lik Shui overconfident and says she shouldn't be so sure she's going to win the business offer. Since he's pretty cocky himself, Shenron offers him a bet. Whoever loses will give 40% of their profits to the winners for 3 years. Those numbers are no joke, and initially, even Lik Shui is hesitant. But Lu Dong must be on some kind of power kick, because he accepts this deal, despite the risks. That is, until Shenron adds another clause, just for fun. The Lu men think he's trying to back out at first, so they offer him the chance to forget the whole business, so long as he bows and confesses his wrongdoings in front of everyone. Clearly, they don't know Shenron very well. He corrects the misunderstanding, but says he's happy that Lu has caught the attention of the other attendants. As usual, Shenron is either being really brave or really stupid, especially since it's really his wife's company he's risking. Lik Shui must be thinking the same thing. She approaches her husband and asks if he really knows what he's doing. But instead of reassuring her, Shenron goes into idiot mode again and suddenly runs to the toilet, complaining about an upset stomach. Of course, he's actually using the excuse to fix the competition. Running upstairs to the VIP lounge, Shenron finds an old friend, one of the 3 directors of the Shumei Cosmetics Company, Mr. Hills. Hills invites him in for a cup of coffee, where he has an adult film playing in the background. I guess even major cosmetics company directors need to unwind. Shenron, not bothered by his friend's taste in movies, cuts straight to the chase. Shumei is hosting the event and therefore in charge of picking a winner for the partnership. So, he asks Hills to guarantee the success of Tianyan, Lik Shui's family company. Hills asks if Tianyan are a reliable business partner, which is when Shenron reveals that the general manager is his wife. Hills is shocked, but immediately agrees, joking that he didn't expect the great criminal Shenron to be bound by a woman. He says he'll have to come down and meet her during the reception, as it's hard to imagine how beautiful anyone could be to deserve Shenron. Damn, does this guy have a little crush? He sure is acting like it. Now that he's agreed to help, Hills wants a little something in return. He's lost contact with his daughter, who he believes to be in Tenhai City. Shenron agrees to help find her, and then returns to the reception below, where he starts tucking into cake and sweets like nothing ever happened. Lik Shui is nervous at his side, and everyone around them seems to be gossiping about the bet, which doesn't help. No one believes that Shenron could possibly come out on top, but when Mr. Hills finally appears to announce the first round's results, the whispers die down. Only 3 companies advanced to the second bidding round. The first 2 are the most popular cosmetics companies in the city, including the Lu families. The third is, of course, Tianyan, and when their name is announced, the old Lu Dong nearly has a stroke. No one has technically won the bet yet, but Shenron is feeling especially smug. Trying to hide his panic, Lu offers to raise the stakes. Since Shenron has rigged the game in his favor already, he has no reason not to accept, even when Mr. Lu's addition is that the loser must do 3 full bows as well as shout in public that they're trash. Shenron seems a lot calmer than all of them, and asks if either of the men will really keep their word. Lu Jr. says his father has nothing to do with their bet, and so the winner or loser will only be between Shenron and him. The stakes have officially been raised. Now there's not just money on the line, but pride, and maybe someone's sanity, considering that Mr. Lu's veins look like they could pop out at any moment. The second round begins, which means the 3 candidate companies are invited to bid, writing down how much money they can invest and the profit they're hoping to receive from the partnership being offered. Now it's up to Lik Shui to decide how much money she's willing to put on the table in her family's name. She's really nervous, so Shenron takes over for her. Well, actually he doesn't offer so much as just kinda snatches the bidding brochure from her. Lik Shui doesn't protest because he puts in an offer for both of them, and soon Mr. Hills is back to announce the results. The numbers being thrown around the room are staggering. One of the competitors offers to invest 5 billion yuan, but Hills turns them down. Soon, it's between Lu's company, Manhua, and Lik Shui's company, Tianyan, who have bid similar prices and requested similar amounts of profit. Mr. Lu is so sure they'll take the prize that when Hills announced Tianyan as the winner, he flies off the handle, calling Mr. Hills a lot of rude names and accusing him of colluding with Shen. Well, he's right about the last part. Ludong Sr. tells his son to calm down and stop making a scene, which becomes harder when Shenron starts rubbing his victory in their faces. Before Lu can shame their whole family, his father tells Shen that they'll forget the whole matter and discuss it another time, trying to hurry them out of the reception before the other guests come looking for a show. But it could never be that simple, especially not when Shenron is involved. He allows Ludong to leave, but his son has to stay. A bet is a bet after all. Lik Shui begs him to let it be. She's worried about upsetting the Lu family, who are known to have links to the underworld. Little does she know, her own husband practically rules the crime scene himself, so he's not scared one bit by these corporate peacocks. He provokes Lu Sr. and succeeds in getting under the father's skin. Lu Sr. threatens him, warning that he can bring down a hell that Shenron won't be capable of enduring. But Shenron won't back down. He tells Bing Xuan to take his wife and leave, promising to rejoin them in 10 minutes. Now things are getting really serious. Ludong has brought in backup, a pack of thugs who he orders to collect all of Shenron's limbs and bring the rest of him in alive. Wow, talk about being a sore loser. Lik Shui is worried about leaving her husband alone with such a dodgy family, and when her bodyguard tries to hold her back, she slaps her, breaking free and running back to save Shenron. I don't know what she's expecting to find, but it's probably not Mr. Lu on his knees, apologizing and calling himself useless trash. Maybe now she'll finally realize her husband isn't the incapable idiot she thought he was. Shenron still has a fistful of Ludong's shirt when his wife walks in, at which point he quickly lets go and starts acting all lovey-dovey again. Lu Sr. is furious and swears to make him pay 1,000 times over for humiliating his son like this. Shenron spares him one last glance over his shoulder and basically tells him to bring it on. In the car, speeding home, Lik Shui asks her husband if he realizes what he's done. Having angered a family like the Lus, she thinks the consequences will be way too serious for them to handle. To cushion the blow, Shenron hands over the Shumei contract, signed and agreed by Mr. Hills. All it needs now is Lik Shui's signature and their business partnership will be official. And there's more good news. It seems like Mr. Hills made some kind of slip-up and wrote a way higher profit percentage than he originally offered. Lik Shui isn't quite stupid enough to fall for that one. She asks Shenron if he knows Mr. Hills, since there's no way such an important document could have a typo. Shenron admits he's seen Mr. Hills abroad, but doesn't reveal the extent of their relationship, reassuring his wife that he only believes in the strength and potential of their company. And isn't that all that matters? Lik Shui isn't convinced, but before they can get into an argument, her mother calls, inviting her for dinner tomorrow and telling her not to bring her husband, who she refers to as that useless man. Seems like Shenron was daddy's choice. Impressed after tonight, Lik Shui asks Shenron to come along anyway, and even holds his hand in the car. Shenron is delighted, and when the day of the dinner comes along, they arrive at her mother's house arm in arm with a basket of fruit. Maybe they thought a gift would soften the blow, but Lik Shui's mother is not happy when she discovers Shenron on her doorstep. He tries to get on her good side, offering the basket as his mother-in-law grabs Lik Shui and walks off, ordering Shenron to start cooking. Which just seems impractical. If anything, I mean, with a house that big, surely she's got at least one cook who would do a better job. Lik Shui's mother is really rude about Shenron, calling him a waste of space right behind his back. And it soon becomes clear why she didn't want him there. Some guy called Lu Shaoqing turns up moments later, dressed like some Pokemon gym leader. Lik Shui's mother invites him in with a smile. He even brought her a present, an antique from abroad that she's very pleased about. As if that wasn't bad enough, when Shaoqing spots Shenron, he thinks he's a servant and asks why the staff are eavesdropping. Ouch. That can't be good for his pride. Thankfully, he realizes his mistake before Shenron can punch his lights out, and introduces himself as Lik Shui's first love. He starts talking about how much he admires Shenron for somehow worming his way into the Zhao family despite all the rumors circulating about him. Shenron manages to keep his cool enough to ask how Shaoqing knows he's not worthy of Lik Shui if they've never met before. Her mother cuts in that he shouldn't be speaking to a guest so rudely, even though he's literally a guest himself, not to mention her actual son-in-law. Lik Shui herself steps in, asking everyone to calm down and leave matters between her husband and her. But she does invite Lu Shaoqing to eat with them, so that likely won't be the last fight she has to break up this evening. Shenron takes it all in stride, suddenly revealing a 6-course dinner that he somehow whipped up in about 5 minutes. After he's eaten, Shaoqing and Lik Shui's mother get to chatting about the porcelain antique he brought around in an obvious attempt to show off how much money he has. Taking the opportunity, Shaoqing says the porcelain has been identified as a royal piece from the Tang dynasty, worth at least 10 million, which shocks everyone except Shenron, who tells the whole table that the vase is fake. So I guess we can add Antiques Inspector to the long list of accomplishments Shenron can claim? But has he gone too far this time? And will he be able to win back Lixui's mother's approval, despite the fact she clearly favors Xiaoqing? Xiaoqing was right that the vase style is from the Tang dynasty, but Shenron says this one isn't an antique, and accuses Xiaoqing of lying about the value of the vase. Obviously, Xiaoqing denies it, and Lixui's mother makes her preferences very clear when she jumps and defends the young man, pointing her finger at Shenron aggressively. Lixui, clearly the only person at this dinner party with any manners, decides that's enough for one evening, and announces she and Shenron need to leave to attend a company matter. But just when they're trying to leave, Lixui's father arrives. Even though he's incredibly late, his timing couldn't be better. Arriving with him is Wu Zhongwu, China's best antiques appraiser. Who could be better to conveniently appear and settle their debate? Xiaoqing invites Mr. Wu to examine the vase, and determines that it is authentic, from the Tang dynasty, and of a royal make as Xiaoqing claimed. Well, looks like we finally found something Shenron isn't good at. Xiaoqing is pretty smug to have an expert on his side, so he goes one step further and announces to Mr. Wu that Shenron called it a fake. Lixui tries to cover his tracks and tells Mr. Wu that her husband was only joking. Upon discovering Shenron's relation to the family, he makes a snide comment that Lixui's father has great taste in antiques, but clearly not in people. Ouch. Sensing an opportunity, Lixui's mother admits that these days she thinks her son-in-law is a waste. Instead of clapping back at her, Shenron calmly asks Mr. Wu if he is certain that the vase is authentic. Even the suggestion that Wu could be wrong makes everyone angry. Lixui's father yells at his son-in-law and tells him to apologize. If Shenron steps over the line and offends their honored guest, then this might be the end of his marriage. Everything hinges on what he chooses to do in the next few minutes. Lixui and Xiaoqing know it too, so the whole room holds their breath as they wait for Shenron's next move. In a bold and potentially stupid move, Shenron decides to stand his ground. He picks up the vase and explains that the expertise and time period don't match. The piece is simply too well made for Xiaoqing's claims to be true. Mr. Wu is shocked. Although he considers the point, he doesn't give over right away. Wu argues that the quality of the piece alone isn't enough to prove that it's a fake. After all, if it was given to the royal family, then wouldn't it have to be the best of the best? Shenron says Wu is right. It's not enough to prove his point. So, he invites the expert appraiser to view the bottom of the vase, which is glass, a feature only used on porcelain from the Yuan dynasty. Before Wu can explain what he's seen, Xiaoqing flies off the handle, calling Shenron some very rude names and promising to teach him a lesson. Mr. Wu steps in before he can throw a punch and admits his mistake. He calls Shenron a bright young man and even offers him a bow while apologizing. Shenron just smiles calmly back, once again coming out on top even in a discussion about antique vases. Is there any argument this guy can't win? Xiaoqing says it can't be possible. He bought the vase for 10 million yuan and had it validated by countless experts. Bad luck, buddy. That's a lot of money to pay for a dud. Mr. Wu gives him a vicious stare and asks the young man if he means to question his professionalism, which wouldn't be crazy given that we just saw his skills aren't exactly up to scratch. Wu coldly provides confirmation that the vase is definitely a fake. Shenron is quite surprised when Mr. Wu bows again and actually asks to be his student, calling him a blessing and a wonderful son-in-law. Then, Xiaoqing interrupts their tender moment by acting like a big baby and smashing the vase on the ground. Speaking through gritted teeth, he reluctantly thanks Shenron for pointing out his mistake. He even promises to repay the favor someday, although something tells me it won't be kindness he'll be giving back. On the way home, Lixui is wondering who exactly is this man she's married, who comes out with more talents each week. Despite wanting to divorce him only a few days ago, Lixui is falling for him all over again. It looks like Shenron might not be the only simp in this relationship after tonight. When they arrive at their apartment, Shenron asks if he can go take care of some things tomorrow. Lixui tells him that once he's done with his work, he can do whatever he likes. He doesn't need permission from her. That's what she tells him, at least. Inside, she's worried that he's going to take the time to meet someone in secret. And maybe Lixui has reason to be worried. The next day, Shenron winds up at the Dark Burst bar, where he's watching a young girl dancing on the pole. But it's not what you think. Remember that cosmetics CEO from the reception competition, Mr. Hills? In return for the business offer, Shenron promised to track down Hill's daughter, Grace, and the search has led him here. Yep, you guessed it. The daughter of a multi-million yuan CEO is at the club dancing on the pole. As Shenron watches, two sketchy guys approach and invite her to a drink. Grace turns them down and firmly tells them to move aside, but they don't budge. Actually, one of them is reaching for her goodies when Shenron pops in and grabs his wandering hand. The thug threatens to kill him if he doesn't let go, but Shenron, emperor of the criminal underworld, isn't scared by the likes of them. He tells Grace her father wants him back, and she agrees to go, but only on the condition that Shenron helps her teach these guys a lesson first. Obviously, Shenron never turns down a chance to fight, so he shoves the creepy guy away, and as his friends approach, he grabs some nuts and throws them at the thugs. Now, I don't know what kind of wrist strength Shenron's been building, but somehow the force of his throw is so strong that it literally draws blood. His opponents even think he has a gun at first, but no. Shenron takes out the thugs with a single handful of nuts, not bullets. Once they're on the floor, he grabs Grace and pulls her out of the club. Though she promises not to run away, Grace offers Shenron a deal. If he doesn't tell her father that he found her, Grace promises to be all his tonight. She gets a little handsy, so Shenron slaps her hand away and puts some distance between them while he tries to hail a cab. Embarrassed by his rejection, Grace starts yelling at Shenron, calling him the worst hired detective ever. I guess sleeping with your clients is in the job description nowadays? Shenron isn't bothered by her antics, but someone who might be is Lik Shui, who is dressed in disguise and watching them around the corner. I sense a misunderstanding brewing. I don't know what she thinks is happening, but Lik Shui has seen enough. She heads home while Shenron escorts Grace back to her father. Mr. Hills is grateful to have his daughter back and thanks Shenron for his effort, promising the full cooperation of his company with Lik Shui's. But Shenron has one more favor to ask. He agrees to meet any conditions that Hills wants to set, and in return, asks for help with the Longyu Company in Jinghua City, the third largest company in China. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons someone like Hills wouldn't want to get involved with such an influential competitor, but Hills is also hesitating because of their connections to the criminal underworld. After their discussion, Shenron returns home to find his wife waiting for him, and she looks pretty mad. Lik Shui immediately demands a recap of his schedule through the evening, even though she knows exactly what he was up to. Shenron avoids the truth and just tells her he went to meet a friend, and says he sent them home about 7 o'clock. Lik Shui asks what kind of friend he has who's hot, blonde, and feels comfortable enough to touch him. Worse than that, she asks what he's been doing for the last 4 hours if they said goodbye at 7. Shenron tries to explain that he was only escorting her to her father and ended up walking back home. But Lik Shui is far too upset to listen to reason and walks away crying, telling him he shouldn't have bothered coming home. Uh-oh. Looks like divorce might be in the cards after all. Shenron tells Bing Xuan to follow Lik Shui, telling the bodyguard to let them know at their first sign of danger. In her anger, Lik Shui drives out to a viewpoint in the city limits where she can cry in peace. She's angry at herself for falling for her husband and seems totally convinced that he's now involved with Grace. Bing Xuan is sort of just standing there awkwardly while she has this massive breakdown until out of nowhere a bullet comes shooting towards Lik Shui. Bing Xuan tackles her to the ground and fires 2 shots, killing both the assassins instantly. As badass as it looks, this incredibly talented bodyguard only thought to bring 2 bullets, which lands them in a pretty tight spot when they turn around and find the real villains standing behind them. Lao Da is glad he let their pawns go first and invites Lao Si to take the first blow. Bing Xuan gives him her best shot, but Lao Si's sucker punch is so strong it makes her spit up blood immediately. Oh dear, someone might be in trouble. With Bing Xuan out of the way, Lao Si steps towards Lik Shui and lifts her off the ground with a fist around her throat. It looks like it's all coming to a very brutal end for Lik Shui until her valiant husband arrives, slamming into Lao Si and racing his wife to safety. Lik Shui is understandably shocked, but Shenron seems really calm for a guy who nearly just watched his wife being murdered. He explains that he worried, so he followed her out here and apologizes for being late. His wife has never seen him fight before and knows nothing of his criminal background, so she is terrified when he promises to take on the rest of their enemies alone. Shenron makes quick work of the henchman, freeing up Bing Xuan to protect Lik Shui while he approaches the big bad Lao Da. He recognizes these thugs, the notorious 4 wolves, from his Mafia connections. But since he knows their identities, the wolves are even more determined to not let him escape. They launch at Shenron while he's lighting a cigarette, because he's decided right now is the best time for a smoke break, I guess. Shenron swings his elbows and feet in every direction, tackling the 4 wolves and defeating them without ever dropping his cigarette. We've seen him do this sort of thing 100 times by now, but Lik Shui is stunned. Maybe this will be the moment when she finally realizes Shenron is more than just a doting husband. The last two wolves come at him twice as hard, but he catches them both by their throats before they even get close enough to land a hit. He gives them a chance in the form of a game, where they must decide which two will live and which two will die. Oh, and they have the time it takes until his cigarette runs out to make their decision and execute one another. Hardcore. The brothers all disagree about who deserves to survive, so it kinda just turns into a bloodbath, with Lao Da and Lao Si acting the fastest to save their own behinds. Once he's slaughtered his brother, Lao Da asks if he can leave, but Shenron tells him that wasn't the agreement. He said they could live, not leave. He offers Lao Da a length of rope and orders the crooks to tie themselves up and take him to Lu Guang, their boss. Now that she's been a witness to 4 or 5 vicious murders, Shenron tells Lik Shui to head home and let him take care of the rest. I guess by Mafia standards, that probably makes him a gentleman. Meanwhile, at Lu Guang's villa, the main villain himself is fighting with his idiot son, who has just killed his girlfriend? Lu Zhun says he suddenly remembered the humiliation that Shenron and Lik Shui made him bear at the reception and flew into a rage, unable to control himself. Who knew these businessmen were so messed up? His father is furious and tells him to drag the woman to another room and burn all the clothes she was wearing. To add to all this mess, one of Mr. Lu's henchmen arrives to announce that 2 of the wolves they sent after Shenron are dead, and the other 2 have arrived at the villa with the man himself in tow. You think he'd be terrified that the Emperor of the Underworld is showing up on his doorstep, but Lu only smiles sinisterly. He tells the henchman to take care of the dead girl, call the police, and wait patiently for Shenron. When he barges in, Shenron has kicked the tied-up henchman through the door, which obviously doesn't look so good to the 2 policemen with their guns drawn behind him. What convenient timing. It seems the police were tipped off that someone in the building committed a murder. So when a squad searches the house, it doesn't take them long to find the girl's body. They know this is Lu Guang's home, but since Shenron was the one who came storming in with 2 bound and beat up gangsters, he's now their #1 suspect. Realizing he's been played, Shenron is quiet while he's dragged to the police station for an interrogation. The officers ask him what business he had at the Lu villa, and accuse him of killing the woman straight away. Shenron responds very calmly that he doesn't know anything about a murder. He only went to the villa to sort out some business with Lu Guang. But when Lu's family confirmed that the victim was Lu Jun's girlfriend, things turn against Shenron pretty quickly. After all, why would a man kill his own girlfriend? Unless his name is Lu Jun, and he is in fact a complete psycho, of course. Shenron asks who reported the crime, and how he could have committed a murder if the police arrived at the same time he did. The officer isn't willing to listen to anything, since it turns out that he's in Lu Guang's pocket, and doesn't care about the truth anyway. He calls up Lu and admits that the case is complicated. He's failed to intimidate Shenron, and there's way too little evidence to pin the murder on him. Lu answers calmly that the 2 guards he sent will serve as witnesses to the crime. All that's left is to come up with some proof, which he seems confident he can do. The officer gives in, but warns Lu he can only hold Shenron for 48 hours maximum, and reminds him not to forget about the 3 million he was promised. Meanwhile, Lik Shui is in the hospital at Bing Xuan's bedside, anxiously awaiting a call from her husband. But when her phone finally does ring, it's the city bureau, who tell her Shenron has been arrested on suspicion of murder, and that she needs to come down to the station and testify. Convinced that her husband committed the crime for her sake, Lik Shui jumps straight in the car, seeing this as her chance to protect him for once. When she arrives, Lu Guang is still spinning his lies, and has come up with falsified evidence of Shenron's murder to the police chief. Lik Shui tries to jump in and defend her husband, insisting the evidence was forged. She's held back by her old friend Officer Yang, who tells her Shenron has been accused of harassment as well as murder, so it's best she stay out of it. Damn, they really won't give this guy a break. Lin Guang and his cronies slam down a load of photos of Shenron that supposedly show Shenron in their house stabbing the girl. Lik Shui butts in, telling the police it's impossible, since Shenron was with her on the outskirts of the city at that time, brawling with the wolves when the murder took place. That's when Shenron himself shows up. He offers the police chief a way to prove the photos were all falsified. They just need to uncuff him. Unsurprisingly, the corrupt officer yells that they don't just go around taking cuffs off criminals whenever they ask. But the police chief agrees, asking the officer if he's really so afraid that Shenron could escape in the middle of a police station surrounded by officers. So, Officer Yang removes his handcuffs, and because he's a good husband, the first thing Shenron does is run over to his wife and reassure her that everything will be fine. Then, he asks Officer Yang for some hand sanitizer, of all things. She runs off to get them while Shenron explains that the images have been overlaid and he can prove it. He squeezes the hand sanitizer onto the photos and starts to rub away the fakes, revealing the real pictures which actually show Lu Jun murdering his girlfriend. I'm not sure what kind of idiot hands an officer photos of his own son committing a murder, or how he even got the pictures in the first place, but now the truth is plain for all to see. Lu Guang starts denying it, claiming Shenron is trying to frame his son, but there's more. Shenron has somehow got his hands on a voice recording of the victim's last moments, where she pleads for her life and explicitly mentions Lu Jun by name. Seeing the writing on the wall, Lu Guang tries to make a hasty exit, before he's stopped by Officer Yang and the police chief, who immediately place him under arrest. Looks like Shenron has beaten the odds and come out on top yet again, despite evil mafia bosses and vicious criminals coming after him. But after the events of this evening, Lik Shui must have realized there's more to her husband than meets the eye. Will he finally come clean about his criminal empire? After everything Lik Shui has witnessed in the last 24 hours, she must be wondering who the heck she married. But for now, her main concern is his well-being. She asks Shenron if he was hurt in the fight at the viewpoint. Her husband's mysterious air disappears instantly. He goes soft at the first sign of her concern and reassures his wife that he is perfectly fine. Embarrassed, Lik Shui tries to backtrack, saying she was just annoyed that she couldn't help him in the fight. Then she asks why he went to Lu Guang's villa in the first place. Shenron is still smiling when he answers, but the softness is gone. He explains that the 4 wolves were sent by Lu Guang, so he went to confront their boss. Then he tells her firmly not to ask any more questions about what happened next. The truth is, the less she knows, the safer she is. Lik Shui seems to know it too, but that doesn't mean she's happy about it. The next morning, Shenron is on the way to pick up Lik Shui's sister from the airport, since she's coming to stay with them for a while. While waiting, he calls the chief of police to ask for news concerning Lu Guang. Unfortunately, the slippery criminal was bailed by his lawyer and has now fled the city, which isn't great news, considering he'll definitely come after Shenron now. When Lik Shui's sister Lik Jin arrives, she's dressed for vacation and is already complaining about the heat. Before Shenron spots her, she's approached by some creepy guy who makes a gross comment about pretty girls waiting alone and offers to carry her heavy bags. Then another even scarier guy appears and tells the other creep he should learn to be a good boy and not molest girls at such a young age. So what exactly does this guy think he's doing? The young guy takes one look at the muscly man and runs off, leaving the bigger guy to manhandle Lik Shin, promising to show her a good time, which is practically Shenron's bat signal at this point. Every time he hears a sleazy line from a predator, he shows up a moment later, fists flying. And this is no different. Shenron turns up right away and knocks out one of the creep's teeth. Shenron doesn't say hi, or ask if Lik Shin is okay or anything. He just starts walking away and tells her to follow. He passes the younger creep on his way and tells him to get lost, saying no guy can call himself a man if he puts a woman in danger. Say what you want about Shenron being a murderous criminal and all, but sometimes he's pretty cool. In the car on their way home, Lik Shin seems especially interested in Shenron, making lots of comments about how much he's changed since she last saw him. But she also says fighting isn't enough to win over her sister. There's one thing in particular about his relationship with Lik Shui that Lik Shin is curious about. Which is probably exactly what you're thinking of. Lik Shui starts asking a load of awkward messages about whether they've done the thing that couples are supposed to do after marriage. So Shenron doesn't answer and just sends them over a speed bump real fast to shut her up. Subtle, buddy. Real subtle. But despite his attitude, Lik Shui's sister can't help but think this guy is nowhere near as bad as her mother made him out to be. And I guess that isn't surprising, since Shenron is public enemy number 1 according to their mother. When they get home, Lik Shin runs straight into Lik Shui's arms. The sisters are delighted to see each other, but Lik Shui has just got back from work, so she wants to take a shower before they catch up. But her nosy baby sister doesn't let her escape. She conducts her very uncomfortable line of inquiry on Lik Shui, asking if there's something wrong with her husband since they've been married so long and there's no sign of a baby yet. Are these normal questions to be asking your older sister? This just feels super awkward. Lik Shui seems to think the same, and escapes the tension to go shower. One of the faucets in the bathroom isn't working, so she pops out in just her towel to ask Shenron to fix it. The poor guy is so flustered seeing her dressed down like that, he can hardly answer at first. When he gets to the bathroom, Lik Shui asks if he thinks he can fix it by himself, leaning down to watch him work. At just that moment, she slips on a very well-placed bar of soap and catches Shenron's arm as she starts to fall, pulling him with her. They end up on top of one another in a very compromising position, towels loose and cheeks bright red. It looks like the perfect time to address the concerns her sister brought up, so Likshui starts mumbling about how they're not really husband and wife yet, even though they've been married for a year. She doesn't quite get the words out, but I think it's safe to say she's officially decided to commit to this marriage, and get a little closer with her husband if you get me. Shenron is just as tongue-tied, blushing like a kid as they stare at one another. Of course, nosy little Likshin runs into the bathroom while they're on top of one another, sending the couple into a panic while they try and explain that it's not what it looks like, even though it kind of is. Likshui basically just propositioned her husband for well, anyway, even though Likshin was the one pressuring them into sex in the first place, she now takes the angry sister role and tells Shenron if he's done fixing the faucet, he should get out and give her sister some privacy. She's done a complete 180. All of her impressions of Shenron are reversed in an instant, and she decides to keep a close eye on Shenron in the future. Halfway across town, Officer Yang is escorting Li Jun to prison herself to ensure that nothing goes wrong on the journey, which turns out to be wishful thinking. While they're driving, a mysterious man on the side of the road shoots Jun in the head, killing him instantly. At Lu Guang's villa, we find out that the man was hired by his father to save him, but ended up missing the shot that was meant for Officer Yang. Furious that his son is now dead, he swears vengeance not on the man who literally killed Jun, but on the Zhao family and especially Shenron, who he sees as responsible for his son's life. Oblivious to that whole mess with the Lus, Likshin is attending university classes at the nearby college and chatting to Chen Yifei, a college friend after class. While the two are talking, this creep named Zhuang Cheng comes up to Likshin. Clearly, he's been bothering her for a while now, because Likshin tells him straight away that she isn't interested in him. At just the right moment, Shenron rolls up, so Likshin takes the opportunity to tell Chang that Shenron is her boyfriend. But her plan backfires. Instead of backing off, Zhuang Chang acts like a lunatic and challenges Shenron to a fight for Likshin's love. You might expect a guy in this situation to refuse the crazy man begging for a brawl and clear up the misunderstanding, but this is Shenron, and he never turns down a fight. He smiles politely and accepts. So, Chang launches at him, feet first. Shenron is still smiling when he catches Chang's foot in mid-air. In a second, he's assessed his enemy and says his strength and speed aren't too bad. It's just a shame he challenged Shenron. Another great line. I'm starting to think he has a list memorized just for moments like this. In one swoop, Shenron swings Chang onto the ground, where he hits concrete and immediately starts spitting blood. Not bothered by the weeping kid beneath him, Shenron calmly tells Likshin to get in the car, since her sister is waiting for them for dinner. Likshin cheerfully agrees and brings Yifei along with her. Her friend seems nervous once they're inside. Apparently, Chang is a nasty piece of work, and since Shenron beat him up, she's worried Likshin will be in more trouble in the future. They're interrupted by a call from Likshui, who tells Shenron that she's going to be stuck late at work, so the three of them should eat without her. From those few words, Shenron can tell that something is wrong. He drops the girls off at home and tells them to go ahead and eat without him. When they're out of earshot, he calls Lin Feng, his assistant, asking if anything happened at Likshui's company. It seems Feng was expecting his call. The Zhao family's prices plummeted today, dropping 10%. In fact, the whole company might have completely collapsed if it wasn't for Shenron's people stepping in. Shenron asks who's responsible, and that familiar name pops up, ManHua Company, the group owned by the Liu family. He tells Lin Feng to get someone known as the fifth brother on the case. Since he can't turn up himself, Shenron also calls Hills to send a professional team on behalf of Xinwei Cosmetics to help Likshui get through the attack. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Shenron's team are working hard to follow his orders, and no one more than this mysterious hooded guy that they refer to as Fifth Brother, who looks like a mastermind sat in front of 100 different screens. The next day at the Liu place, the big baddie himself is overseeing his own team of cybersecurity specialists, attempting to break through the Zhao servers. But they're having some trouble due to the Fifth Brother's efforts, and won't be able to do the same damage as yesterday. Plus, Tianyuan have better traders, so their stock prices are starting to rise again. Liu is beginning to freak out when one of his team announces there's now a virus in their own system, and their computers are giving up completely. Facing catastrophe and driven by his need for revenge, Liu decides it's time for Plan B. From now on, they'll buy up all the loose shares of Tianyuan Cosmetics until they have almost total control of their company. Oh, and because he has absolutely no chill, Liu also tells his employees that he'll kill anyone who leaves the room before it's done. Now, that's what you'd call a healthy work environment. Over on the Zhao side, it looks like they've fallen for Liu's trap. They think it's good that someone is buying their shares, and their prices are going up. But then the realization hits. Tianyuan's shares are being bought in bulk by Lu. They've already snatched up 1/3 of their Lu shares. Likshui needs to send a lot more money into the market to fix the problem, but things are going wrong faster than she can keep track. 2 unknown accounts have started buying them up. Although these accounts claim to be friendly and promise to transfer the Lu shares they've acquired to Likshui herself, there's no way to tell if it's Shenron's people or Lu's. In fact, it could be both. At least one of the unknown accounts is the work of the 5th brother on Shenron's behalf. Shenron's next move is to visit Jiaomei Cosmetics, where he's greeted by Director Chen, who is smart enough to look nervous. Anytime Shenron turns up in a boardroom, things don't seem to go well for other people involved. But Shenron isn't here to threaten. He offers to buy their 5% share in Tianyuan at the current market price, as long as Chen transfers it to Likshui himself with no conditions. Given how Tianyuan's share prices are now rising again, an offer like this will make Chen rich while also securing some of Tianyuan's stock from Lu. So for once, Shenron has found a way to make people happy. At Likshui's office, her employees have reported that share prices have stabilized and they've recovered 4% of their stocks. The unknown account got their hands on 8%, which makes Likshui worried that it might not have been Shenron. But before they can get too comfortable, Lu Guang suddenly turns up at Tianyuan, this time as a shareholder, and is called a meeting demanding Likshui's attendance. Looks like the trouble is only just starting. Inside the conference room, Likshui finds evil Lu and some very unhappy looking shareholders waiting quietly. Lu wastes no time before he tells Likshui that from now on, Tianyuan Cosmetics will change ownership to the Lu family. I'm not sure how that logic works, but I guess if you have 1/3 of an entire company's shares, you can do whatever you want. Actually, Lu now has 44% of all Tianyuan shares, making him the largest shareholder with the power to remove the chairman. Likshui is shocked, not just at his arrogance, but at how he managed to secure such a huge portion of her shares in such a short time. It seems most of her ordinary shareholders sold up to Lu Guang, either through intimidation or plain stupidity. His first proposal is that Zhao Likshui be dismissed, but she argues back that all the other shares belong to her, so technically her and Lu are on equal terms. That means she can only be dismissed if all the shareholders make a unanimous decision. Then, the 3 remaining shareholders declare that they all support Mr. Lu, and with their combined support, Lu is up to 47% and therefore owns the outright majority of the company. Lu is shocked. She just watched her family fortune be stripped away from her in only a minute. Lu smugly announces that Tianyuan is no longer a Zhao corporation, and demands she get out of his building. Then who turns up next? It's Director Chen, the guy Shenron just bought 5% from. When he walks into the conference room, Lu yells at Chen not to get involved if he doesn't want his business to be chased out of the city. But to everyone's surprise, Chen stands his ground. He's not afraid of Lu's threats, and reminds the villain that his company is the one on the verge of bankruptcy. He should be more concerned about himself. Chen then turns to Likshui and gives her his 5%, which he's transferring to her free of charge. That puts Likshui's shares just 2% higher than Lu. It's not much, but that tiny advantage is enough to send Lu Guang back to whatever hole he crawled out of, and win back Tianyuan Cosmetics for the Zhaos. Lu is absolutely furious, but Chen tells him calmly that he might want to make a call. Looks like the situation at Manhua isn't quite as stable as he left it, but when he gets on the phone, a familiar voice informs Director Lu that he's too late. Manhua is no longer under the surname Lu. Lu screams at Shenron down the phone, asking how the heck he got inside his company. Over at Manhwa, Shenron is sitting comfortably in the director's chair in a pinstripe suit. He tells Lu that he just gave him a taste of his own medicine, taking a few shares here and there until he became the majority shareholder and removed him from power. That's when Lu really loses his rag. He calls Shenron some names I can't repeat here, and tells him not to dare touch his company. But, like Shenron said, it's already too late. Likshui thanks Director Chen, but asks if it was Shenron behind this miraculous transfer. I mean, given that it was Shenron who just answered the phone to Lu from inside his own building, it seems pretty obvious who she has to thank for saving her company. Speaking of the man himself, Shenron is waiting for Lu when he storms back into the building in a fit of rage. He tells Lu they've prepared 2 transfers for him to sign, and when he looks them over, Lu is shocked. Shenron wants to trade 35% of his shares in Manhua for 44% of Lu's shares in Tianyuan. Basically, he's trying to get Lu off the board of shareholders and gain back Tianyuan for Likshui. Lu says he won't fall for his tricks, and Shenron won't force him to sign. But who knows what will happen to Manhua if he doesn't. Contemplating how much more he has to lose, Lu gives in just before Shenron reaches the door. While he's signing, Shenron asks why he bothered to go to such lengths to mess with his wife. In the end, he must have had to pay billions to buy up the market. He tells Lu he has records of all his crimes, including manipulating his income, hiring and killing people, and transcripts of all illegal actions. Oh, and then he casually mentions that the police are probably downstairs waiting for him by now. It's a pretty baller move. But I have to wonder, why did Shenron bother trading with Lu if he was just going to have him locked up anyway? The shock of discovering that Shenron has enough evidence to put him away for life is too much for Lu. When Officer Yang storms upstairs to place him under arrest, she finds him already dead, laid out on the ground. Whether it was Lu himself who took his own life or Shenron, it isn't clear. But if it was Shenron, his conscience doesn't seem the slightest bit ruffled when he walks away, ordering his men underground to keep up their efforts to wrestle Tianhua from the Lu family. Although, really, who's left? The son was killed by the father, and the father killed himself. I'm not sure they have anyone else to worry about. When Lixue returns home, she finds Shenron waiting with dinner on the table like nothing ever happened. When she asks him if he was at Tianhua, Shenron does his best impression of an innocent idiot and says he couldn't possibly go to Tianhua after the legal mess the Lus are in. Lixue takes that as a sign he doesn't want to talk about it, so she promises not to press. She just asks one thing, that whatever he does, he makes sure he keeps himself safe. I don't know how he managed to wriggle off the hook after literally dismantling a corporate empire and probably causing a major cosmetics director to kill himself. But once again, it seems like Shenron has saved the day and got away scot-free. Join us next time for the conclusion of Strongest Son-in-Law, where we'll find out if Shenron can keep this winning streak up, or if his luck will finally run out. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more recap content. Thanks!